Hello, welcome to the data channel, and you are watching Microsoft Fabric basics and the concepts that we are discussing in this playlist. And as part of the topic 4, we are explaining today the difference between Lakehouse and Data Warehouse and what is the concept of Lakehouse and how exactly the Lakehouse is built on top of a data warehouse, right? And what exactly the benefits of Lakehouse as part of the Microsoft Fabric as concerned. If you're Before proceeding, if you're new to this channel, we would recommend you to please subscribe and also press bell button for instant notifications. So let's get started. As you can see in this, right, we are discussing now the concept of lake house. So lake house basically in the it is a center part of the fabric. So without a lake house, there is no we can say there is no Microsoft Fabric concept, and it lies on the heart of the Microsoft Fabric, as you can see. So it acts as a central nervous system in the brain, right? Like everything has to pass through the lake house here, and it has a key ability. It's a key ability of Microsoft Fabric to create lake house, right? So Microsoft Fabric, when you create a fabric, it does create a lake house, and that is one of the ability of Microsoft Fabric. And without lake house, the Microsoft Fabric won't operate. And similarly, a lake house is very fundamental to whatever you do in the Microsoft Fabric, basically. And Lakehouse is a data architecture which combines the power of both data lake and delta lake. So if you heard about a data lake, basically it is a concept where where the data which is unstructured, right? So unstructured data is stored in the data lake, and it is designed to have variety of data, whether it is structured, unstructured, right? And also it is designed to store a huge amount of data and also a huge variety of data. And the one of the advantage of data lake to consider is it doesn't enforce the schema enforcement. So it actually that means so you can quickly add the columns, remove the columns on the fly. So it doesn't have any schema enforcement concept. So that way it gives a lot of flexibility in terms of the schema as concerned, right? And that is the data lake concept, right? And data lake is built for the modern analytics, where you have structured, unstructured, semi-structured data, where you can dump audio file, video file, images, right? So any kind of data can be dumped into this data lake concept. So however, the data warehouse as concerned, right? So data warehouse is used to store the data in a structured format, because it's having a table and columns, and you dump the data into the data warehouse tables and columns, tables especially, and this is why we use data warehouse. Is to allow faster access to various analytics. So if you compare data lake, so data lake is good for multiple writes. You can write the data every second, right? So that is where the data lake, the advantage of data lake is comes into picture. But when it comes to data warehouse, it is good at providing a use case where you have a multiple reads. So data warehouse is not good at taking multiple writes. So it is good at taking multiple reads. So that is why it is mostly used for faster access of various analytics and reporting purpose, right? And so as you have closely observed, the data lake and data warehouse has their own capabilities. So what here the lake house concept is definitely it is a combination of data lake and data warehouse. That means a data lake plus a data warehouse, they are combining. Microsoft is combining as part of Fabric concept, and they are calling it as a lake house, right? And here the lake house can be, as you can see here, you can use Power BI, you can use any kind of ingestion pipeline to dump any CSV data, Parquet data, image file, audio file, any kind of files into the lake house, because it is a designed in that way. But however, if you want to enable the reporting, definitely you need to have a Parquet kind of format, a Delta Parquet format. Otherwise, you'll not be able to report in Power BI. But if you have any data which is in the tabular format, which is like a which can have a structure, so definitely that can be dumped into lake house. And So whatever data you have in the lake house, right? So it is actually whatever data goes and comes out of lake house. So it doesn't matter, because if Power BI wants the data to be in a particular format, right? So it gives the data, lake house will give the data into that particular format to Power BI. No, but internally the all the data is stored in the Delta Parquet format. So that's the key point to note there, right? And with this combination, combined power of power comes the scalability also, because as most of the services are serverless and easy to manage in terms of compute and cost as well. So as you have seen in the previous videos in this playlist, so there are multiple services that Microsoft Fabric has, and all the services use the same um, one lake. And so one lake is a storage location, right? And it's a workspace. So here the lake house is actually a concept where data is actually stored in a kind of a like a Delta Parquet format. So that is where the lake house concept come into picture, right? And if you go to the next slide, we can understand in detail, right? So we need to ask here we need to check here, like there are different data sources. So as you can see, there is a file, there is a database, business application is there, maybe there is a real-time data coming in. So all the data, irrespective of what is the format, what is the frequency, what kind of data, and what volume of data, so everything is come and dumped into a one lake, right? So one lake is actually, if you see it, it's a virtual concept actually, because you can see here it is a shortcut to the location. So one lake is a shortcut to this location. And also, so here inside one lake uh, you have a lake houses, right? So these are all lake houses. As you see, this symbol is a lake house symbol. And so this lake house, the data in the lake house, what happens is, if you see, it is a pipelines and shortcut. So actually it has a shortcut using one lake. Microsoft Lakehouse, Fabric Lakehouse will get the connection to this kind of a sensor data or whatever data it want, and it has a shortcut in the one lake workspace. We have created a shortcuts. It will refer to the shortcut, and it will get the data into the bronze layer where it is a lake house. And irrespective of what data it is when it comes to this lake house, this will be converted into a Delta Parquet format, right? And once it is converted to Delta Parquet format, it can be consumed by data engineers. As you can see here, it can be a any data engineer who is working in the Databricks Spark jobs, right? SQL, he want to write a Spark SQL query or whatever data transformation he wants to do, he can do that. Similarly, the same data can be referred by data scientists who want to do some machine learning use cases. And similarly, the same one lake where the data is stored, it can be Microsoft Power BI can use a SQL analytics endpoint, and they can connect to this locations where the data is location of the lake house, and they can directly access. So in the previous video, we have seen how Power BI uses a direct lake concept to directly connect to the one lake. So if you have not seen that video, I would recommend you to please go and check the playlist. In this playlist, we will be able to see that. Okay, so let's move to the next slide and understand why lake house, right? So why Lakehouse? If you see, we have several advantages. One is the scalability and flexibility. Definitely, automatically, the scalability is enabled based on the workloads here. This is like this doesn't happen in if you take data warehouse like SaaS solution, Azure data warehouse or SQL databases, where you want to provision in a cloud, AWS or Azure. So what happens is you need to configure that the workloads and whatever the capacity that you need. But here it is everything is automatically scaled up and scaled down based on the data and the compute power that is needed. And lakehouse can store in a variety of data, whether it is structured, unstructured, and without schema enforcement, any files can be stored. But if you want to use the file in a Power BI, that needs to be a Delta Parquet format. So the second advantage is analytical capabilities, right? So there is a wide range of analytical capabilities, because you see there is a different compute engines. Previous videos we have seen, there are multiple services, right? There is a machine learning service, there is a Databricks, Spark. You can use Power BI, you can use real time, Synapse Analytics, or any kind of a reporting where you use Power BI. So all of these services, there are different services. So all these services can refer the same data which is underlying in the lakehouse. So that means it gives that analytical capability and flexibility to choose any of this analytical platform, but still use the same data and perform the uh, job that you want to perform, right? And the next one is ease of use. So because it is easier to manage compared to traditional data warehouse, as they don't need to have level of complexity in terms of configuration or administrations. Suppose if you want to see as part of a, because it is automatically scalable, right? So it doesn't need separate operation teams where you have to maintain that as a from the admin point of view. So that way it becomes very easy to manage and maintain. So the last one is cost effective. So definitely because there is no need of like same hardware or the infrastructure that you have seen in the previous prefabric era, what we can say, like where you need to have uh, like basically you need to have a separate infrastructure hardware, right? So and there is a time to scale also, like time to scale investment you need to perform, because if you have to scale up scale down you need to plan accordingly and all, so that will not be here. So it since everything is scaling up scaling down is very done at a very dynamic way, so the cost will be definitely saved. So now let's see, how do we, as a user, how do you interact with a lake house, right? Because there is already a lake house built, right, in the fabric. So once there is a lake house, how do you access the lake house? As you may be a developer, data engineer, you might be a reporting person, you might be an end user. So you need a ways, you need to understand, or you want to know the ways that you can interact with the lake house, right? So that is what we will discuss in this particular slide. The first one is the Lakehouse Explorer. So this is an application where you can download it, and uh, like it's a main interaction page basically, where you can explore data in the Object Explorer. So we will see in the upcoming videos in practicals how to do this. So this is one way of accessing it. So basically here it is just a page, right? So like as you can see, we will just show the page. It will just be like a page like this, where you can just upload. Basically you can click on get data, you can upload the data, right? So this is how you can, this is a lakehouse explorer what we call. So you can just upload some dummy data, or the data you want to analyze, so you can start dumping that into work like a lakehouse. Or also if you have a already existing lakehouse, so you can just get access to that, and you can workspace, and you can just start querying or looking into that data. So that is there. And the second one is notebooks. So notebooks, if you are familiar with the Databricks or any Jupyter kind of notebook, and if you are like a developer, like a data engineer or someone who definitely knows this, or if not, so notebooks is just a programming interface where you get a lot of where you get a page where you start writing your Spark code, Databricks code. So that we call it as a notebook, and we can schedule it as a jobs to write the code, and you can read, transform, and write the data directly to the lakehouse. This is basically a programmatically, right? So you are doing the things here programmatically, right? So this is important. So this is the programmable way of doing it basically, right? And this is just an interface. This is a UI using object interface, object explorer, right? And the next approach is pipelines, Gen 2 data flows. Again, if you are like a person from a data engineering background, so definitely you have heard about Azure Data Factory. So Azure Data Factory, where you can create a pipelines, right? And you have a Power Query option also, where you have connectors for both this ADF and Power Query to ingest the data and egress the data from Lakehouse. So basically you have a connectors, ready-made connectors for while using ADF and Power Query, you can directly connect to the Lakehouse. to maybe ingest and prepare the data in the lakehouse. Okay, and this is a kind of a where you can call it as a where you are doing a ingestion, data ingestion and preparation. You can use it, and this is for programmatically, and this is for a where you have a UI, right? And the next option is where you have a like a 200 plus. Like there are a lot of connectors, native connectors that can be used to integrate data into the uh, like a Fabric pipeline and utilize sophisticated user interface. Also use a shortcut feature to connect existing data without any movement. So this already we have seen in the previous videos also, right? So how we can use the shortcut features, because that is the abstraction that the abstraction that the Microsoft Fabric will give you. And so here why we are calling it as a native connector is suppose you are a Spark developer or you are a SQL developer, right? So for all of these, there is a native connector, so you can directly interact with the data which is underlaying in the lakehouse. So there is a lakehouse here, okay. And if you want to use a SQL, you can still use a SQL programming language. If you are a Spark developer, okay, so you can use the same data which is there in the lakehouse. And if you are a Power BI person, you can use a DAX query and you can use a SQL like SQL kind of queries. So where you can again read the data or write the data basically in the into the same location, lakehouse location. So as you can see here, it is a native connected. We have, I mean, this lakehouse, what we're calling it, basically it has a native connectors, like 200 plus native connectors, something like this. Like these are three examples, but you can think of many other connectors where it gives that integration pattern to this kind of a lakehouse scenario. Okay. And the last one is Power BI. So as that we were already discussing, right? So where we are talking about the reporting and visualization need, right? Using the lake with using the data in the lake house. So here, with respect to like TDS and SQL endpoint functionality to enable query on the lake house. So SQL endpoints basically enables to query in DAX and SQL on any kind of data here. So this is how these are the many ways, different ways of interacting with the lake house, the data in the lake house. So you can read, write, or perform any transformations using many of these. You can choose, right, basically what is suitable for your use case. Suppose you want to, so this is just for the scenario where you want to read as a person, as a analyst, you want to just go and read and write, right? So this is where you want to do write some notebooks and jobs where you want to perform the data engineering and data science kind of activities. The third option is basically if you want to perform a kind of a ETL, right, where you want to move the data, right? So those kind of scenarios. And the fourth option is where you want to have a flexibility of connecting the using different connectors to use the data in the lake house. And the last one is where you want to use the visualization scenario, right? So these are all the cases, right? And so now at last let's understand the difference between data warehouse and lake house. So this is actually you can go and see the same thing in the Microsoft documentation. So we want to explain here because this will tell a lot of story to understand what is a lake house. So the lake house, as you can see, will not go one by one here, but if you see. Lakehouse pretty much does all the things whatever the data warehouse does, because it is a combination of data lake and data warehouse, right? You've already seen that. That's why whatever data warehouse is capable of doing, almost everything that lakehouse is able to do it here. And so the main important thing here is to note is there are a couple of like primary developers. As you can see, there is a SQL. If you are a SQL engineer, data warehouse developer, you can still use data warehouse. But you should not see any use case where you have a lakehouse and cannot perform whatever the data warehouse was performing. So it is always better to use lakehouse. So only thing is if you are having a multi-table transaction, so then you still use data warehouse. So and there are different options you can go through here, okay. And pretty much lakehouse is built on top of data warehouse, so it is always makes sense to use make use of data lake Microsoft Fabric Lakehouse concept. And So we would not say data warehouse will completely go off, okay, as the lakehouse is introduced, but because internally still the data warehouse is being used, but it is but at abstract level, so we are using lakehouse, so which is giving us definitely a lot of flexibility, right? So you can store any kind of data. So, and if you're a data scientist, data engineer, so this will really help, right? And if you are you can perform, as you can see, any kind of programming language. There is no limit for that, right? And you can use Spark notebooks, Spark jobs, and all, right? When you talk about a primary development interfaces. So access data via shortcuts. So as you can see, both are enabled it. Okay, here only thing is indirectly through a lakehouse again. So it is enabled, but it is via lakehouse, because without lakehouse there will be no shortcut concept for the data warehouse. So this is just a brief, and you can, for further detail, you can definitely visit Microsoft documentation and understand more about it, read more about it. So hope this was useful, and thanks for watching.